Hello and welcome. My name is Tara, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the dark night of the soul. Now, this is an experience that I recently went through. I still might actually even be going through some of the after effects of it, truthfully, still working through some of the shedding of the old, especially the ego. And this process is the death of the ego. It's a very painful, it is a very excruciatingly uncomfortable process that we do need to go through. And some may experience it on different levels in order to transcend. And I do feel that a lot of us will experience it. Maybe not all, but I do feel in some degree, because again, we all have our own personal experiences. We all come from a certain history. Some of it may, so for some, it may be more drastic of an experience than others to go through. Mine, I started it probably around, it could have been 2 years ago, actually. And it was definitely necessary. I feel that that is the direction that I was being guided towards. There was no way around the situation if I could have tried. So I was put into a particular moment in time where I had the ability to go within and just take some time out from my career, from life in general, and just allow for change to happen, because what I was doing and who I was and what I was trying to do wasn't working. And it was the time in my life where something really very significant had to happen, had to change, because of the direction that I was going in was just not working. It was not working. And I'm talking about in all areas of life, just none of it was part of who I was, what I wanted, who I wanted to be. But I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who I wanted to be. I knew on some level, but I just couldn't get there. And the way that I was used to problem solving or figuring things out wasn't working. So I had to be open for something more. I had to be open for something different. And that's where I went through this incredible transformation. And I went deeper into myself. And through this transformation, it was like depression times 1,000. I mean, it was, I just felt like my whole inner self was being turned upside down. So it's not depression, and depression I know very well because I've lived in it my entire life. So depression is definitely different. And I thought for a while that I was just going through depression that just got worse, essentially. But in some areas of my life, things were getting better. I was becoming clear. I was seeing things differently. I was understanding my life differently. I was understanding the world differently. I was understanding, and just starting to feel more on a deeper level. My spirituality and my intuitive gifts actually increased during that time. So I was on a trajectory, and my old life was starting to fall away. But my true self of really who I was starting to excel, was starting to grow. And that was my inner gifts. That was my psychic abilities, my intuition, my healing abilities, learning and researching and understanding more and more about myself. And so it was very interesting and profound. And we all have different experiences. We all have different timelines. But if you feel that you're going through this, you may not really know until you're out. And I didn't even know that I was going through a Dark Night of the Soul event in my life until I first researched what it was. I'm sure I heard the phrase Dark Night of the Soul before, but I really didn't understand it until I went through it and experienced it from my own experience, from my own deeper self. And that's the only way that you're going to understand it. And that's the only way you're going to understand if you've gone through it or if you're going through it. Now, you probably know that we are going through an incredible transformation right now, and it's going to continue to grow. More and more of us are going to go through this experience. And I do feel that a lot of us will or do have to go through this experience to really start to dismantle our old self, to dismantle our ego. It's the death of the ego. It's the death of the old, what we're familiar with. And my ego during this whole process was fighting it the entire time. A lot of my deeper self was open for more and open for more experiences. But my ego was holding on to a lot of this change in a very, very strong way. And I had a very strong ego. I have a very strong mind. So it's a blessing and a curse all wrapped up in one. And trying to differentiate the ego versus my pure self, my true authentic self. And that was a struggle. It did take a while to understand that. And it really took a while to dive deeper into my experience of who am I and dismantle the old layers that are getting in the way of me living fully. But I've lived with a lifetime of these layers, of the limitations, of heaviness, of depression. And so it's been a very long journey to slowly let go of what has become very familiar. Because when we become very familiar with feeling a certain way or living a certain way, we begin to think that that is just the way it is, or that is our reality, even though part on this very soul level or very internal true self level may feel otherwise. Yeah, this doesn't feel exactly 100% right, or who I am, or what I'm in alignment with. So there's a lot of the sifting through the old, sifting through what is mine, what isn't mine, what have I been accustomed to, or how have I been creating my life based on old energies, experiences, beliefs, especially traumas. Well, they do form beliefs, right? And the beliefs start to form our reality from a very subconscious level. Now, the dark night of the soul, as I'm sure you may have heard of it, or maybe you're going through it. It's talked about in many different religions, especially with regards to a type of transformation. Now, I'm just going to talk about it again from my experience. I do recommend to read up on it and look into it. And maybe again, if you're going through it, to try and understand where the journey is taking you. Because when you go through this particular transition in life, and it is very profound and it serves a very, very impactful purpose for your journey, where is it leading you? Where is it guiding you? And trying to step away from the being very ingrained and attached to the negativity, to the sadness, to the fear, to the ego, especially to the old traumas and old energies within self. Now, oftentimes we can't do this alone. And I was very fortunate that I did have some guidance through this time to go into some of my subconscious programming for releasing, for understanding a lot of myself and my old programs that have been ingrained since childhood. And yes, of course, since past life. And I had to do the work, and I had to go really deep on this because I don't want to live under these false programs anymore. And I'm not fully out of it, and it probably won't be for a long time because I feel there is no end until you have reached full 5D consciousness, until you have gotten to that full state of ascension. Now we can get there. We can. And I'm a firm believer. I do feel at some point I will reach that. I feel in some ways I have reached it, but I know that I'm still tied to some programming that is deep within, that's holding me back. Some old traumas, some old hurts, some old wounds, whatever they are, they're there still. And they still come up every now and then, but they're not coming up as much as they used to. And as I mentioned, I lived in a life of trauma, of depression. So I'm familiar with the low energy of living in the thick of it all. And from where I used to be and where I am now, world of a difference. I have a life that is a lot lighter, that is a lot clearer, that is a lot more in my power, in my authenticity, but it still is progress. It still takes work to chip away at the old. And I feel that there may be a time of very uncomfortable, very deep transformation, a lot of depression, a lot of question, maybe even questioning life. There were moments where I didn't even want to live anymore. It was way too much to handle. And especially living a whole life of extreme traumas and difficulties, it does wear on the psyche. It does weigh on our soul. It does weigh on ourselves, on our human experience. And it also does still form a lot of subconscious beliefs, a lot around self-worth and lack and limitations and doubt. And again, the fear and anxiety and who knows what else is going on in there. So it's a lot. There's a lot to peel back. So allow for this transformation to take shape and be kind to yourself. And I know it's difficult. We can't fear the shadow. That is part of our existence. That is part of who we are. And we need to it's not comfortable, but we need to get familiar with the energy and a way to work through it in a constructive way, and to know that it's temporary. When we go through a transformation or we go through something that's uncomfortable, it's temporary. And when you come out of it, you're going to feel different. It's almost as if it's a really ugly cleansing process, really, when you get into it. It's a really ugly cleansing process. It's all the old gunk and energies and memories and traumas and situations running its course. And if you think of all of these situations and energies that we have within us, it is just energy. But they form pictures in our mind, our memory, our visualization, then it forms the emotions, and then it dictates our actions. So it actually influences our actions in our world. If we stop ourselves from doing something, if we prevent ourselves, or we play safe, or we want to maybe not really shine in our light. So it does prevent, or it can also create actions and reactions in our outer world, how we react to certain measures or to certain situations. If we're reactive and impulsive or angry or upset, right? So it can form many different experiences based on what we are processing and what we are releasing. So be gentle with yourself. And like I said, for myself, it took probably about, I would say, a good year of very, very, very difficult transformation. It was ugly. It was ugly. There were days where I couldn't get out of bed. There were weeks, I should say, weeks where I couldn't get out of bed. There was almost no end in sight. Like it just felt as if it was never going to end. Very, very difficult. So check in with yourself and look towards the light of what you want, of who you are. And you may have to work with someone to guide you through the situation or guide you through the transformation. Like I said, I was very lucky to have some help during that time to let go of some of these old limitations and really coming to terms with situations from the past, and really coming to terms with all of these experiences that have been buried deep within myself, so that I can become more, so that I can create more, so that I can have more love in my life and more fulfillment and more experiences, and move towards that 5D state of consciousness, that higher transcendence, if you will. And I know it's within reach. I know it is. But again, it's still, there's a lot of old stuff here within I'm pointing at myself. There's a lot, but we all have our different stories. Some have less. Some people have less. I've seen people in the spiritual community who I feel really didn't have much, unless they're hiding it, unless it's a hidden experience, right? Not wanting to face it, not wanting to, and avoiding the past altogether, or not knowing how to go into the subconscious to let it go. And I feel that unless you're at that 5D consciousness, unless you're there and you know you're there and you're living in that higher expression of self, in full love, in full expansion, there's still work to go. And sometimes we may feel that we are there, that we have created big change, or we know a lot about ourselves, or we've done the work. But unless you're there in that 5D consciousness, there's still more to go. There's still more to go. And there have been moments where I thought, yeah, I know everything. No. Definitely not even close. And the mind cannot comprehend what is going on in here. And that is the battle and the transformation that takes place, is moving more into the soul and moving more into oneness with all, not from the mind. And the separation does take time. It really does. And there's the greater impact of the Dark Night of the Soul event, but then the aftermath of it. It's the fine tuning, it's the adjusting, it's becoming more and more and more one with yourself, and more understanding, and chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, and letting go of the fear, and letting go of the problems, and letting go of limitations or anything that's lowering your energy. And then you reach your higher state of consciousness. So it is a very important aspect of our existence. It's a very important transformational experience that we will go through, that many of us will go through. I mean, I don't know for certain if all of us will experience it, but I feel that a lot of us will have to, in order to work through the ego and let go of the old patterns and programs of the past. And it really is a catalyst for change. It really is a catalyst for us to look at life differently, and look at ourselves differently, and look at energy and love differently, and our lives in abundance differently. It does offer a great opportunity for many, many things. So again, don't fear your shadow. If you're going through a difficult time, see what is bringing up to the surface, B, what you can learn through this, and C, where you're going after this. And D, most importantly, your bigger picture. The Hangman in Tarot, your bigger picture. What is it teaching you from a bigger landscape? Where do you see yourself going? And how much have you changed through this process? That is the most important. This is a whole different experience of living. We're used to seeing change through performance, through accomplishments, through reward, through gratification. Now, this is different. We need to see this is out of the mind, out of the ego, and moving into ourselves and into all, and understanding that energy from that expansive vantage point of really getting out of the mind, out of the ego, out of that stubbornness, and getting real and going, okay, I actually have changed. My viewpoints are different. My energy levels are changing. I feel like I'm not giving my energy to things of the past. Is going to be different for everyone. Now I know maybe more about myself. Now I feel more in alignment with who I am, whatever it is for you. But those are going to be your answers through this process. Those are big answers. We're used to seeing life differently in our regular normal society and societal norms. Now, this is looking at life differently. It's looking at yourself differently, more expansive, more in love, more in oneness, paying attention to your intuition more, your heart more, relationships more. That's very important. We lose sight of that again in our society. So we can have the best of both worlds. I firmly believe that we still can have a very successful life and have a very accomplished life, or whatever appeals for you. But it comes then from a different place. It comes from a place of deeper meaning. It comes from a place of ease, of creation, of flow, also enjoying life, not being so serious about getting stuff done, So I do hope that offers some guidance for the dark night of the soul. If you have any questions at all, please leave comments below. I'm happy to answer. I also do have my podcast. The link is below as well, of the dark night of the soul, of my experience in extreme detail. I didn't hold back on it because it did get pretty dark in there. But again, we can't avoid the darkness. There's so much value going into the dark aspects of our life, of relationships, of our family, of traumas. It's not about living in it. It's about understanding it and learning so much through that. There's so much valuable information that come from that. And it doesn't mean that that what we've gone through makes us a bad person or a worse person or imperfect. It actually means that we have more to work with and we have more to offer the world maybe, or that we're going to have greater wisdom from those experiences and greater knowledge from those experiences. There's a whole slew of wealth from those experiences, and it shapes us, and it's up to us to choose how we want to work with those experiences and with that knowledge for something greater. All right, so I do hope that offers some guidance again. I'm wishing you all the best throughout your journey and beyond, and I'll be seeing you very soon. Take care.